He decided to rip off Stormy Daniels, and she applied for welfare even though her husband's a professional athlete. Let's get right into the people who had no reason to run a scam. Number 4. Ms. Greedy. Jade Robinson collected fraudulent welfare payments from a Commonwealth entity while claiming to be a single mom while she was married to her rugby player husband who earned $160,000 a year. She collected the payments from Centrelink, an assistance program for the Australian government that pays out benefits to retirees, the unemployed, families, carers, parents, people with disabilities, and other disadvantaged people. Despite not being really disadvantaged in any real sense of the word, Jade collected almost $50,000 in payments from the entity. And she did this despite being happily married to David Fifta, a rugby player who earned enough money for her to lead a comfortable lifestyle. The couple actually married in 2014, but Jade started collecting the payments in 2011 and didn't stop until 2016. Jade got herself into this pickle in 2011 when she clicked a box in a Centrelink form that said she was a single mom with 2 young boys who never married or lived with a partner. But at the time she clicked that, she was already in a relationship with her husband, and they even appeared on the NRL footy show to talk about their relationship. So why did Jade, a seemingly comfortable woman, carry out this scam? What was in it for her? Well, she said that she wanted the money to buy designers and a new car so that she could measure up to the wives of other rugby stars. In a way, jealousy was the reason why she continued with the scam even after getting married. She simply felt the need to keep up with the social circle she found herself in, and that led her to continue to accept those payments. In court, she pled guilty to the crime of defrauding Centrelink $48,507.52 in single-parent payments. Interestingly, despite being convicted of the crime, Jade never spent a night in prison. She was sentenced to 8 months of home detention instead. A psychological report said that she was immature and had an inability to extract herself from situations she had put herself in. Maybe that was why she carried on the scam for so long. Number 3. Pokies Junkie. Sandra Balfour defrauded a car company of almost $2 million while working as an accountant there for 20 years. According to her defense attorney, Balfour didn't use this money to live a luxurious lifestyle. Instead, she spent most of it on pokies, which is the Australian term for gambling slots. She carried out the scam for over 8 years and got away with it for so long because she never took lump amounts. Sometimes she only took out as little as $100 from the company's account. Sandra was pretty clever with fraud too, as she made sure she labeled the payments into her account with generic names so that no one would notice. Since she had worked at the company for a long time, she was really conversant with their financial systems, so she knew everything she needed to do to avoid detection. For example, she never made the transfers using her own login information. She always generated that of random employees and then used her details to verify the transaction. Since she was a trusted employee, no one really suspected her, and she was able to continue making those fraudulent transactions for around 8 years. But she couldn't get away with her theft forever. One day, a customer complained that they hadn't received an insurance product from the car company. This launched an internal investigation that found that Sandra had sent the money to her own account. And with this, her years of fraud blew apart. The car company promptly discovered that Sandra had scammed them for around $1.89 million from 2010 to 2018. She was immediately arrested and charged to court. In court, her attorney argued that she didn't steal because of greed, but because of need. He said her addiction to gambling was the reason why she stole, and she was merely a victim of this horrid addiction. The prosecution argued that Sandra had established history of fraud because she had been once convicted of defrauding another employee of $30,000 in an unrelated case. Her lawyer said that the conviction was also a result of need, as she had wanted to pay off her mortgage when her husband lost his job, and that the money was now repaid. While the judge was sympathetic to Sandra, he said that her actions were a significant breach of trust. As a result, he sentenced her to 8 years in jail. But there's some reprise for Sandra Balfour. She'll be eligible for parole in 2024, just 6 years into her sentence. Number 2. Still rich. Multimillionaire Eli Taktuk used investor money from his real estate scam to pay for his divorce from his supermodel wife. Eli got married to his wife back in 1998. However, they got divorced in 2011, and his wife, Daniela Seaman, got married to footballer Cesc Fabregas after leaving him. As part of the divorce settlement, the court ordered Eli to pay his wife £1.4 million. Unfortunately, Eli couldn't put that cash up, and this led to the sale of a £5.5 million property in London to a company that Fabregas had an interest in. So Eli was basically forced to sell his family house to his ex-wife and her husband to afford their divorce settlement. Outside of paying the settlement to his ex-wife, Eli also had other bills that needed paying. For example, he had lawyer fees that were very expensive. But instead of finding legal means to raise this money, Eli did the unthinkable. He decided to get it through fraud. During the period that Eli was dealing with divorce proceedings, he met Adrian Knoll and his father Frank Knoll. They came from a wealthy Swiss family and were interested in investing in a joint venture with Eli. The business proposition was simple. They would bridge finance the purchase of a property and its renovation and sell it for a profit. However, instead of using the funds provided by the Knolls to finance the purchase and renovation of the apartment, Eli used it for something else. First, he paid off a huge chunk of his legal fees from his divorce. That alone took about £200,000. Next, he bought a £28,000 Porsche and then rented a £21,000 a month prop. He also spent about £20,000 on private school fees. While he was doing all of this, he was telling the Knolls a tall tale about the state of their property. He showed them multiple receipts and invoices about work going on in the apartment and even collected more money from them. He told them that he had obtained a standard mortgage for the property when he had obtained a bridging finance that ran up to £61,000 per month on interest payments. By the time all was said and done, Avenatti had collected over £2 million from them. He would have collected more if Adrian Knoll hadn't noticed that the property looked like a shell when he inspected it a year after continuously paying Eli. The straw that broke the camel's back was when the Knolls discovered that the National Bank of Abu Dhabi was selling the property at auction following a mortgage default. Once they learned of that, they commissioned a private investigation into Eli's business and discovered his lies for what they were. They found that he'd used their investment to fund his luxury lifestyle and was a frequent shopper at Harrods on their dime. Unfortunately for the Knolls, there was very little they could do about their lost investment. The property they paid for was already auctioned, and they had basically lost all of their £2.5 million. During his trial, Eli remained extremely defiant. He told the judge that his family was worth £150 million, therefore implying that he really didn't need to defraud. But the facts of the case disagreed with that argument, and it was proven beyond reasonable doubt that Eli had indeed defrauded the Knolls. In fact, the judge was so disappointed with Eli that he said he could never believe a word that came out of his mouth if it wasn't corroborated with other evidence. Eli, on the other hand, said that his behavior was due to suffering a nervous breakdown because of his divorce. The judge replied that a lot of the acrimony from his divorce was due to his actions, and as such, he should expect no pity, since that couldn't be an excuse for the lies and deception. The judge later convicted Eli and sentenced him to 7 years in jail. After his conviction, he suffered a devastating breakdown that culminated in a real attempt to take his own life. This meant that he missed his sentencing hearing, but was sent to jail all the same. While in jail, he decided to appeal the judgment, claiming that his conviction was unsafe and that 7 years were simply too much. They also argued that the entire trial was an unfair process and that the judge didn't consider his mental health issue, among other things. At the appeal court, the judges rejected his claims and told him that they had no merit and he was to finish serving his sentence. Number 1. Storms. Michael Avenatti attempted to extort Nike and defrauded a slew of his clients. He used the proceeds from those frauds to fund a luxury lifestyle that he certainly could not afford. Avenatti was hired by Stormy Daniels in 2016 to free her from a hush payment she got from Donald Trump in the build-up to the 2016 elections. Daniels alleged that Trump paid her the money so that she could hide the fact that they had an intimate relationship decades earlier. While Avenatti was ultimately unsuccessful in releasing her from the NDA she signed, his defense of her and the sensationalism she brought catapulted him to media fame. Before long, he was a regular commentator on news channels, and people generally wanted to hear him speak. Stormy Daniels herself also became really popular, and as a result got a book deal. The advance for the book deal was around $800,000, and that was where things got sticky for Avenatti. He hatched a plot to steal around $300,000 from Stormy Daniels by impersonating her. To carry out his plan, he sent a fraudulent letter to her literary agent carrying her signature, and through that letter, asked her agent to transfer her advance to a client trust account he controlled. When Miss Daniels asked him about her advance, he paid her around $500,000 from it and said that the second installment was yet to arrive. Apparently, the advance fee came in at a time when Avenatti's law firm wasn't doing very well for itself and was on the brink of bankruptcy. Avenatti siphoned the money from his client in order to stop this from happening. He also spent the money on personal expenses like plane tickets, hotel rooms, dry cleaning, and monthly payment on a Ferrari. But this isn't the only grand scheme that Avenatti was getting up to. He had an even bigger scam lined up. His next target was Nike. His plan was to extort the shoe company of around $20 million. To start his scam off, Avenatti told Nike that he had evidence that the company's grassroots division had paid athletes to attend certain colleges. This was potentially brand-damaging news, and Nike had every incentive to stop the news from getting out. Avenatti told Nike that if they wanted to stop the news from getting out, they needed to pay him to either conduct an internal investigation or pay him $22.5 million to resolve the potential claims of a youth basketball coach he represented. He added that if they didn't agree to his demands, he would call a press conference and tell the world about Nike's supposed underhand deals with grassroots athletes. It was a classic case of extortion. However, Nike's lawyers weren't falling for the extortion attempt. Instead, they got federal officers involved and launched an investigation into Avenatti's behavior. When the case eventually got to court, Nike said that Avenatti caused a $300 million drop in Nike stock valuation due to one tweet he sent about the entire matter. Nike's lawyers also argued that they were scared that Avenatti would irreparably damage the Nike brand due to his lies. Amazingly, the Nike and Stormy Daniels cases aren't the only examples of Avenatti trying to defraud people. He didn't just lie to Stormy Daniels and Nike. He also lied to other clients, IRS collection agents, creditors, a bankruptcy court, and a bankruptcy trustee. One of the clients he defrauded was a man named Jeffrey Ernest Johnson, who had won a $4 million settlement from the city of Los Angeles, but had only received a fraction of the money through periodic payments that never went past $1,900. The rest of the settlement money was pocketed by Avenatti, and he spent it only funding his lavish lifestyle. In all, Avenatti got around $12 million in settlements for his clients and lied to them about it. He either claimed the settlements were yet to arrive or that he was being paid in installments. In any case, he made sure that his clients never saw their full settlements. He used the proceeds from this fraud to live lavishly and even co-owned a $5 million private jet that was eventually seized by the police. He didn't just use these settlement payments to live lavishly. He also used a part of it to pay for legal expenses and also pay creditors when his law firm filed for bankruptcy. He also paid costs associated with a coffee company that he owned. Outside that, Avenatti was also an avid tax dodger. For a period of 2 years, he withheld taxes from the paychecks of employees at the coffee company he owned. He also didn't pay about $3 million in payroll taxes to the government. To crown it all, he tried to obstruct the government's efforts to collect about $5 million in unpaid payroll taxes by routing the coffee company money to different bank accounts. These were all serious accusations, and if he were convicted of the crimes, he would be looking at about 333 years in prison. So, was he convicted? Did he get those 333 years? Avenatti did not get sentenced to 333 years in jail, but he certainly got some jail time. First, he was sentenced to 2.5 years for the Nike extortion case, and then he got another 4 years for defrauding Stormy Daniels. At his trial, the judge presiding over his case said that his crime against Daniels was made out of desperation and that Avenatti's behavior had been inspired by blind ambition. Despite bragging that the court would exonerate him months before his conviction, Avenatti claimed that he was indeed sorry for his actions and that he had betrayed the trust of his clients, colleagues, and people who believed in him. In a lengthy speech, he took responsibility for his action and said he had brought shame to his family, loved ones, and the legal profession at large. Click to watch one of these next videos. Let us know in the comments section whether you think scammers are born to scam or are scammers cultivated into scamming.